And I also get chiropractors that run out of ideas, and they'll complain to me like, how do I think of ideas for content? And I was like, do you treat patients? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, that can be your muse, like all these patients come in with great questions and great conditions, and you answer them all the time.
You're listening to the Restoring Human Movement podcast, where movement experts discuss the latest evidence-based practices to help you and your clients move with mastery. And now, your host, Dr. Sebastian Gonzalez.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Sebastian Gonzalez again with the Restoring Human Movement podcast. And today is going to be a little bit different, similar to some of the one-off ones I've done over the last month or so. And it's going to be based upon business, marketing, and just overall development of how to build a business and help people just like the lay public, athletes, and so on. Now, if you're lay public and just a regular person that's not healthcare, then I apologize. You might not want to listen to this one too much. But this is actually a topic that I think that we need to hit a couple times over the years, because the problem in our profession is that a lot of times that really good clinicians, and this goes for PTs, DCs, ATCs, MDs, and so on, some of the really good people get passed over by the public because they haven't presented themselves very well online or very well in the public's eye. And I'm not saying they've done anything bad or wrong, but for the most part, the dirty word of marketing and business development is something that I know that I shied away from a lot when I was first getting out of school. I thought it was just slimy, just like thinking that you were going to market and sell to somebody. But realistically, the only way that you lay public are going to find us is if we are outspoken about how we can help you and give you great content that'll lead you in the direction that might be helpful to you. So clinicians, DCs, PTs, MDs, ATCs, and probably massage therapists, everyone is going to get a ton from this. I'm going to interview Dr. Kevin Christie today, who is the founder of the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Group, as well as that same podcast. He's one of the podcasts that I do listen to, and I go back to frequently to get bits and pieces of some of the things that will help me develop content for you guys. So we're going to go over content creation today, how to develop the tools to help your patients or help your market or your target audience learn more so they can realize that you're the go-to guy to help them. So we're going to get into this. You're going to get a ton. It's going to be a little different than, again, the clinical knowledge ones, but hang in there. This is extremely important. And if you don't know how to get anyone in your door, you're not going to have anyone to help, period. Now let's get on to that real quick story that you guys are, I'm sure, all waiting for. Okay, so I had this other, I thought, amazing idea, and obviously I'm never going to make this again. I've already played with coffee business and side business before. I'm going to stick to the stuff I'm probably best at here. So I was thinking that, what is kind of useless is that we have knives and forks and spoons, and remember back in the day when we had more sporks, we had like the spork or the fork knife, the fork spoon. But obviously not a knife on it. Knife would be a little bit of an issue with this hang-up, but I think an engineer can figure this thing out. Why don't we just make a tri-tool? Make a fork, knife, spoon, and kind of use our teeth, mainly what they're intended to do, and they're intended to rip food off of whatever food it is. So you just stab the thing, use these forks, but then the problem is that these things might be plastic, and they might break and bend. Plus, we're in the anti-straw movement, so why don't we get rid of those straws there? As well as these plastic utensils, which are just obviously going to be single-time use, thrown away, and then they come in packages of 2 and 3 anyways, forks, knives, spoons, so what a waste. So I was thinking, why don't we mitigate this whole thing here? Why don't we do a single, again, utensil, make it a spork, knife, spoon, and make it real fancy. You make a metal one. And I remember before that I've seen people, let's just say people with their own chopsticks. They come up with their own chopsticks. They bring them out of this little box to this chopstick holder, and they're so proud with them, and they get down with their food with just those chopsticks. And then they wipe them off, take them to the bathroom, put them back, and they take them, and when they leave. So they reuse the darn thing. So I was thinking these metal sporks, how cool would it be if everyone's got these like little hipster like sporks, metal spork spoons, that they actually put in their back pocket. Maybe it comes in a nice little handkerchief, kind of when you give maybe like a collie dog or maybe like a sheep herding dog because, you want to call him Chuck or something like that. So you get these little things and you keep them carry them around. And I think when they're dressed up real classy, when they're delivered really classy, kind of like the iPhones, right? You get an iPhone, you look in the box, you're like, holy shit, this box is so nice that I don't want to get rid of the box. The packaging is what sells those things. So I think with packaging, we can make these spork spoons, spork knives, really sexy, and people are going to be so proud to bring them out and show people that they have the new version. We're going to do the X, we're going to do the 6S, and so on. It's going to be so cool. So anyways, someone can have that idea. I'm sure if you go to China and get these stainless steel spoons, they're going to be on the cheap. You sell those things for $20, you got a lot of money. And you know what you can do? Kind of like use the Tom's model. So Tom's, every time they make a shoe, they say that they're gonna give a shoe to a person in need. So you can actually take the spork, and every time someone buys a spork, an overpriced metal spork, then actually they give a meal to someone in need. How about that? So people love to buy off emotion. So you feed someone in need, I'll buy a metal spork all day. Here we go with the content. Everyone, welcome on Dr. Kevin Christie. Say hey.
How you doing?
Great. So we've podcasted before. Have I been on your show twice or 3 times? You've been on mine now the second time.
You've been on mine twice. I think it was the Modern Desk Jockey. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. Have you been on the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Show?
Yeah, I think we talked about content repurposing.
Yes, we did. I was confused if it was the Modern Desk Jockey or if it was that one. But yeah, so I think we've done 3. You took over my Modern Desk Jockey one and did a solo round on that too. So I think this is round, and then I've been on your show before. I think this is round 5 for us.
Damn, yeah. we come a long ways. So I thought I would have you on today mainly as I'll make sure I try to make sure to frame all of our conversations and make sure the listeners can understand what they're going to get from it. Yep. There's young clinicians as well as seasoned ones that come on here that we mainly talk about clinical tips and so on. I thought an introduction into your world would be a really good one for them, because how are they going to work on anyone if they have no one to work on? Yeah,
absolutely. And that's kind of my story. I've been practicing for 13 years. I would say from 2006 to 2011, I was really heavy into the clinical side of things. Like that's all I focused on, and patient outcomes. But inherently, I was doing a good job in my community of public speaking and networking and doing things that were building my practice pretty well. And then I opened up my own practice in 2010 and just kind of realized from there I was getting better clinically. It takes time, but I was getting good at that. And I've never stopped learning that. I think it's a lot easier now than it was back then to consume good information because of social media. Like just articles are nonstop available versus back when we were in school, you had to like search for stuff and even had to go to the library, right? You have to have a student that was still worked at the school to get the library access. Yes, exactly. So it's been so much nicer nowadays to get the clinical information. So that's good. But I realized I needed to improve from a business and marketing standpoint. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but I've recently learned the term skill stacking. And essentially it is taking 2 or 3 or 4 skills that are different but congruent and they relate to each other. For instance, if you happen to be a nutritionist, but you also happen to be really good at cooking and you happen to be you learn how to write, you could technically take the skill stack of your nutrition knowledge, your cooking knowledge, and your writing knowledge, and you could be an expert writer in the field of healthy eating, right, and cooking. So that would be an example of skill stacking. Now, what would be a bad example of skill stacking would be I'm a chiropractor, but then I also open up a Subway shop, right? Like that's not that that's wrong. That's just not going to be 2 skills that are going to stack, right? So to make a long story short, I, since 2011, really try to learn the fine aspects of business, because we don't learn that in school, as you and I know. And then I really wanted to learn elegant and effective marketing. And for me, that is content marketing and being able to be a valuable resource in my community. And inherently, that would help grow my practice. So the few skills that I've tried to really hone in on was obviously my clinical, and then business and marketing. And so that's kind of what I've been doing over the years.
Mm-hmm. So, because you said business and marketing, would you separate those into parts?
I would, yeah. I mean, they are in a lot of ways interchangeable, but the way I look at it, right? Like we go, let's say we went to undergrad for 4 years. I was an exercise physiology major. Most of us that are chiropractors were some sort of science-based major, not everybody. And then I had friends when I was at Florida State University that were business majors. They spent literally 4 years just learning business. And then I had friends that were marketing majors, and they spent 4 years doing that. So you can kind of, split them in whole 4-year degrees and even MBAs. And for business, they're different. But obviously, if you're really good at marketing, your business is probably going to thrive a little bit better, right? Mm-hmm. If you're really good at business in the sense of cash flow and things like that, you'll do a better job. But if your marketing is poor, you may struggle with cash flow and developing the business. So I do separate them, but they are congruent.
Okay. I'll ask probably just from younger me, when I was getting out of school, mainly the people that I learned clinical stuff from, like they seem to not really, they frowned upon like the idea of marketing and business savvy people. And I just did a speech over at the SCU, which is the local college over here for chiropractic. Okay. And it was on YouTube marketing. And I always try to think back to what I felt like. And I felt like when I tried to get people in, I felt like slimy.
Yeah.
Is there do you ever experience that when people are talking to you about this stuff?
There's a lot of chiropractors that are concerned with that. And I remember being a student early on as well, because I think a couple of misconceptions happen, or realities. But we do unfortunately see bad clinicians in a lot of forms of healthcare that are not good clinically, but they do a lot of marketing and a lot of it being distasteful, and they are successful financially. And it kind of, I think it kind of burns us a little bit. We're like, that's not good. So that's a problem. I think traditionally a lot of marketing that chiropractors have done have been very poor, unethical, sometimes cheesy, like things that we don't want to do as doctors, to try to drum up business. Mm-hmm. And so there's definitely that. There's the holy grail of certain clinicians that we do see that are just, they excel clinically, and they grow these huge referral-based practices, and that's great. But I think one thing they fail to realize with those really good clinicians too is that their communication skills are really good, mm-hmm. and they're passionate, and so that does help that. But I also think the game has changed a little bit nowadays. If it was back in the day, in-network insurance paid well. It was, people came in, they had low co-pays. There wasn't as many chiropractors in your community per se. I think a lot of that's changed now, so it's a different environment to where even if you're good clinically, you need to be doing things to get yourself out there, and kind of show how good you are, and what you do have as a service is extremely valuable. So I think that's one of my goals, to be honest with you, mm-hmm. when I work with chiropractors and with our podcast and our Facebook group and everything, is to dispel the myth that marketing and business is bad. If you do it right and you are clinically sound and you care about the clinical outcomes, then adding good marketing and sound business skills to you is going to benefit everybody, including your community.
Mm-hmm. By the way, so everyone knows, I'm going to put some links to the Facebook group as well as Dr. Christie's podcast on there too. It's one of the ones that we spoke off air, that it's one of the only ones that I really go back to and listen to, because I remember I'm like, I wonder what Kevin's got to say today, or what expert he has on. But I think you're right with with actually the passion too. Like the internship that I did, dude was like extremely passionate, and yeah. He didn't do any marketing, and he kind of told me that you just do good work, people will come. And I don't think that's the case. And I think even especially young clinicians, like the interns that have come through my place, they're not especially confident. Maybe rightfully so. Maybe they need some more stuff to learn, but I think the passion is what sells people, and I still think that's part of their marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then as times change, then how are we supposed to change in our education of patients or reaching them?
Yeah, I think it's about, so let me kind of, briefly define content marketing, because when I say that word, or if anybody hears it, they just think, okay, content, what does that mean, right? Like Netflix produces content. But
they got some good shit now.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's amazing. Content is king for sure, but content marketing is putting out valuable content, whether it's videos or blogs or public speaking. Content is just really the fuel. It sometimes gets misconstrued as social media. That's really just a vehicle to get the actual content out there. So you're actually developing useful content that's very valuable to a person or to a community, that helps drive know, like, and trust. And then from there, when they do need you, they will think of you. And a lot of times I have people that refer patients into my office and I've never met them. They've never been in my practice. I've never met them, and they're referring people to my practice, which is that's pretty useful. Like if you start getting not only patient referrals from people that had already come in your practice, but you start getting people referring to you and they've never met you, that means you've kind of doubled up the referral engine. And content marketing does that. If you get a good, concise, and consistent plan out there, people are going to start to find you as a valuable resource. And so that's content marketing.
What's the first content piece that you created?
So I graduated in 2005. I started practicing in 2006 because we had a little delay with Florida boards down here back then. But at the time, not knowing it, so we didn't have social media or anything. One of the things that I was doing was I was really focusing on golfers at the time. Like early on, I was niching with that. And I was writing for the local golf. It was called Tee Times magazine, and it was a golf one. And I got in, I was writing for free on that. And that was a good lead generation for me for golfers. And that was a form of content marketing. I was doing live workshops for trainers in gyms, and I would send, letters to them, and I would meet with them, and then I would do the whole training with them. And so live events can be a form of content, because I was obviously creating content. So those were a couple of the early ones that I was doing before social media made it easier.
So did you, were you able to repurpose any of that later? I know that it probably took a lot of time to make that.
Yeah, it did. And here's another thing what I did. Like, so when I did the golf writing, I actually ended up contacting the Florida Chiropractic Association. They have a quarterly journal that's pretty well developed, nice journal that goes out to a lot of chiropractors. And I wrote for that about being the, golf chiropractor in your community. And it was I think it was like a 3-part series that I had in there. And I started having chiropractors sending me patients with specific golf injuries that they weren't getting results with. So I found that pretty interesting as far as repurposing. I was targeting golfers in my community with the content, and then I repurposed it and targeted chiropractors in the state of Florida. And then I was getting referrals that way. So that was one way of definitely repurposing it.
It's funny that I think getting out of school, you'd never think like I'm going to hit up my classmates to have them send me patients. Just kind of curious, what was the major injury that would be referred over with those golfers, and then what was the missing link in them?
Yeah, so I'm certified in active release technique, and I kind of chatted about that in there. And I remember vividly a chiropractor down the street, probably 2 miles down the road, sent me one of his patients with a wrist injury that was golf related. And so, I doubt he would have sent me a back or neck, but he just was more of a traditional chiropractor. And so he didn't see a conflict of interest, and he was looking out for the best, interest of his patient. And so I vividly remember that one.
That's cool. I was like that. One of my best friends, he just recently moved. He practiced no more than 5 minutes away. And that was nice. Like in the past, probably in the beginning, I was a little bit more cautious of meeting local competition. But I feel like there's more than enough people go around, and we got to refer out accordingly.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting earlier that you broke these down into two parts. Is you have your content and then you have your vessels.
Yeah.
Because I actually didn't even think about that, but I do think about the promotion of the content created, and I think about social media as the way to promote it.
Yep.
Can you go into a little bit about maybe how to create content not specifically targeted at one type of social media, or how do you create the content and how do you disperse?
Yeah, I actually kind of break it down into, you have your GPS, you have your fuel, and you have your vehicle. The GPS is like, the messaging and where you're trying to get to, who you're trying to get to, basically. And then the content is the fuel. That's really what drives it. But then, email would be a vehicle, YouTube would be a vehicle, Instagram, Facebook, direct mail. Those are all just ways of getting it out there. So how can we create content? And I think content's interesting with content marketing. And I'm going to do a little segue and come right back. People get a little overwhelmed with creating content. But yeah, creating is like the highest on the totem pole. But then below that, you can curate content. Like you can take content that other healthcare providers have written and you can share that. You don't want to obviously steal it and put it under your name, but like you could share it through different channels. And if it supports and it's congruent with the type of care you provide and the audience that you niche to, then it's great. And then you mentioned earlier, you can repurpose content. So you have 3 strategies to get enough content into those vehicles. And so creating can be anything like a video. So you could shoot it and then repurpose it. You could shoot a video, then you could have it transcribed and turn into a blog article. You can have the blog article put as an email to your patients. You could have the blog article on your website, which you should. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of ways of how you can create it. Typically as chiropractors, we're really talking about writing, video. You can definitely do audio, which I did with the Modern Desk Jockey. That was, a community-based podcast where I was trying to educate the community. Mm-hmm. And so those are a few ways of creating it, but don't be afraid to curate it either, which is just take other people's and share it. And then obviously repurposing it.
Mm-hmm. Have you? I've done this. I'm just curious if you have too. I've curated missing parts of. Say, I want to write a whole article on wrist pain, and I haven't created everything yet. But I do like writing, and I'll shoot the videos. I got no problem with that. But there's parts where I'm like, that's a great video. I want to share this with my people, so I'll put it into the article, and then later I'll redo the video as exactly how I want it.
Yeah,
you ever do stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great, and you can definitely do that. I'm going to actually go over how I think you can take one video. You can definitely do 2 or 3, and then write a blog, and from there you have basically like a month's worth of content by repurposing and curating, which is something that I try to get people to understand so that it's not so overwhelming. And so basically, you could take a video. A topic. Let's just take a topic, and then you can shoot a video around that topic. You take that video, you put it to YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. Now that video is on YouTube. Google owns YouTube, which is good. So now you can get a little bit of SEO going on. You write the blog based on that topic. You insert YouTube links into the blog that goes onto your website. You obviously can take some other people's content and put that in the blog, obviously reference it, but it's like for instance, I did a low back pain and golf one not that long ago, and I took a nice chunk out of a Titleist Performance Institute article they wrote on it, mm-hmm. put it in there as supporting my view, obviously reference it and put the link to the article. And so now I have a pretty robust blog, and I also have a YouTube video goes in there. Now that blog can be emailed to my patients. I can run a Facebook ad and a boosted post to that blog that's on my website, right? So I'm directing them to my website. What I do is I take a few of my blogs, I make a really nice quarterly newsletter, and I submit that electronically through email and all the different things. And I also physically print that on nice print. It's a 4-page one. I print about 100 of them. I put those in my reception area. So my reception area now doesn't have any golf magazines or any of these one-off magazines. It's all of the content that we create. So it's in there. And so now that's a form of repurposing. If you have the finances and you can measure the ROI. I do think direct mail can be useful. So you could physically mail the blog if you choose to. Mm-hmm. But you with the blog, you got Facebook, you have Instagram, you have email. It's just amazing how you can just literally take a video or two in a blog, and now you have a month's worth of content. And then you can just supplement that with some of the curated content. Like if Chiro does a really good article on something, or Evidence-Based Chiropractor, or whoever else, if it's, spine journals, anything, you could take that and just email out to your patients as well. So it's actually not as hard as people think it is. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna give you that infographic too. Good.
I was gonna say, do you have a cheat sheet for people?
I've got a nice little infographic that does that. So.
Oh, good. It's funny, like even so with you talking, and I mean, I've obviously spent a ton of time making content. I had to think about that really hard.
Mm-hmm. No, I know. It sounded probably convoluted, but I got a nice infographic that'll help you here. And one of the things this will help you do sometimes, because I was running into this, because I think, you and I have definitely historically created a lot of content, but sometimes you can get a little frustrated with sometimes creating too much content.
Right.
I'm just, you're creating too much and you're not dispersing it enough through the different vehicles. And so if you have a good strategy like this, it can take the stress off of having to create it all the time. And if you have a good repurposing plan, it can really take that stress away from you.
Yeah. I think I find that I like actually creating content. I like getting up every morning to write. I don't love shooting videos because then you have to look pretty.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. There's a whole marketing part I think it's extremely stressful. And by the time I've failed to market some of the best content I think that I have, I already want to write a new one.
Yeah.
Can you take us down the route of maybe how to get eyes on those content pieces now that you've created one?
Because like what you just mentioned, one of the mistakes people make, and you may be running into this, and I know I have, is that you don't give the piece of content that you wrote enough life, right? Like you wrote it and you move on to the next one, but you didn't really maximize that value of the content and let it kind of marinate with your audience. And then, because then you just hit them with something else right away. That's why, like for me, I've done some things strategically to not have that happen, right? But it takes it takes some time to figure that out, what your audience can handle and what it can't. You can burn out your audience. So I think that's something to consider is and find out what you're good at. There's some people that are like really exceptional at writing, and there's other people that are exceptional at video. And sometimes the ones that are exceptional at video aren't necessarily naturals at it. They feel comfortable with it. They do it, they get better at it, and that's what they get known for. And so find what resonates with you. Make sure you have an audience that's niched and supports the type of patient you're trying to have in. And then don't feel like you have to be on every platform. I think it's easier now, and it's fine to be well-rounded that, like you can definitely do that. But if you're just like, I've interviewed people on my podcast. I've interviewed a couple people that are just absolutely killing it on Instagram, and they don't even really worry about YouTube. Like every video they shoot is under a minute and it's going on Instagram. They just don't care about YouTube because they're getting 30 new pages from Instagram. I've got people that are killing it on Facebook ads, and they don't really care about Instagram. And they just doing. So if you're just absolutely killing it on one and your bandwidth is limited, don't be overly concerned with everything. Like, I got to get on Twitter, But I do think being well-rounded is very helpful for people, because your audiences can be found on different platforms.
Right. What platform are you finding most success with, do you think, then?
For me personally, it's Facebook, and it's not just Facebook ads, which is another misconception. Everybody thinks of Facebook ads, and then when they think of Facebook ads, they think of like the lead generation only, like get leads. And it's not really like that, in my opinion. And so I think with Facebook, you're talking about being active in certain local groups. Like I am active in a lot of the running and triathlon groups here, just being useful, not spamming the group, just being useful. I have chosen to utilize my personal profile in the community as well. So I have a lot of patients that are personal Facebook friends. That's not for everybody. When I did that, I made a decision not to talk about controversial things. So there's a lot of chiropractors out there that do talk about whether it's politics or religion or controversial health topics. I would probably avoid that if you're going to do your personal. I think Facebook business page and Facebook ads are very helpful as well. So I have a pretty well-rounded Facebook presence, and it does help.
Okay. It's funny where you're talking about staying middle of the road on that kind of stuff. And I was thinking about this before, actually. That, you know how like we have the divided Republican Democratic parties, and everyone just hates one side or the other?
Yeah.
But the side that loves the side that, like, all the Democrats love the Democrats.
Yeah.
That's a really passionate group. They'd be a really great niche. So I've wondered before, like, if you just hammer one side, not politics, but whatever it is.
Yeah.
And maybe your group just loves you, but I haven't done that because I don't think you can go back.
Well, that's the thing. And it's a good topic. You know, it's how polarizing do you want to be as a local chiropractor in your community? I do think certain industries and certain things, you have to be polarizing. Like if you were a politician and you were just kind of middle of the road, you wouldn't succeed. I think there are certain things where polarizing can help, but I don't think it's ideal per se in chiropractic. Now, there's a couple different types of chiropractors. There's evidence informed, and there's more that tend to be like vitalistic or whatever. And those folks on the vitalistic side will post things and say things that I just never would, and frankly don't believe in. And they are kind of polarizing, but they are just feeding to their particular audience.
Yeah. Way earlier, you were talking about overwhelming for content creation. And I think we should go back to that because what is the easy? What do you usually give the people you mentor? What suggestions to how do you create content in your first piece?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have a plan. So what I typically do, so we have the Chiropractic Success Academy, Dr. Bobby Mabey and I, and we have close to 100 members in there, and it's grown really nice. And we drip out weekly content, and we have a Facebook group that we kind of hash it out and stuff. But one of the first things we did is they filled out a practice audit, which was pretty comprehensive. And I went through all of them. I had a pretty good strategy to do it, but I did go through all of them and give feedback as far as like the top 3 things to start now as far as marketing. And one of the things I noticed is first you need to know where are you struggling at. So I would see some people that had plenty of new patients, but it just seemed like their office visits and their collections were struggling for some reason, right? And then I have another person that the new patient numbers were low, and that was the problem, and you could see it. But their office visits matched up pretty fairly. Like, okay, like, yeah, with that amount of new patients, that's a pretty good number of office visits, but we need to get more new patients if you're going to have a successful practice. And I felt like that's important because I talk about and this is Dean Jackson. He talks about the before unit, the during unit, and the after unit of marketing. And for chiropractic, before unit would be basically your new patient marketing. During unit would be that patient experience from the minute they contact your office to the end of their treatment plan. And in the after unit is basically patients that are done with care and haven't been in for a while. And so I found some chiropractors, and I'm going to answer your question here in a second.
No, I like the stories.
Chiropractors were doing good with new patient marketing, but the patient experience was poor. There was nothing that they were doing to really give that patient confidence to stick through a short, concise treatment plan and get the results. And then their after-marketing unit was non-existent. And so if I saw someone that was struggling with reactivations or a healthy number of office visits per week based on their new patient amount, I figured we need to do some content marketing and create some content for that after unit, right? And so to me, the first thing I saw, a lot of people out of these close to 100 audits were not emailing their patients. And if they were, it was only for like Thanksgiving, email or
Birthday.
Christmas email, right? So I had them to let's start creating email content. Let's try for 2 times a month or once a week to be useful content, nice content about certain conditions or whatever patient experiences. And so if I had to answer your question, if I have a chiropractor that's struggling like that, I think email is a great way to get that going right away. Okay. Mm-hmm. If I have a chiropractor that's struggling with new patients and they need to get new patients, that's where we're going to have to really dive into, in my opinion, kind of like a total web presence. And it's kind of a catch-all term, but to do that is like, we need to have this, like I get so many patients now from just wherever. It's like Google ads, Facebook, an Instagram post. Like there's just like a lot of different web presence ways I'm getting new patients now, but it took time to cultivate that. But I want to start that. And so for me, I would make sure that my website is a content platform mm-hmm. and not just an online business card like it is for a lot of people. I would start blogging at least once a month. I would repurpose that blog, but to have a nice, robust blog, I would also be shooting the video. You know, maybe it's healthy tips. Maybe it's a corrective exercise to do. Maybe it's a patient treatment with consent from the patient. There's a lot of different things you can do. And I would just really focus on the long game of having your website as a content platform and then distributing it as such. And so it's a kind of a long-winded answer, but that's mm-hmm. what I would tell chiropractors to do.
Would you speak then as the in unit, would you speak to new patients, potential new patients, in a different way than you would with your email established patients?
You can, you definitely can. But a lot of times it's going to be more about just how you're getting it to them. There are different strategies. Like, for instance, a good after unit strategy that I have is these healthy desk jockey info cards we put together. They're really nicely designed. One is a micro break card. The other is an ergonomics card. We have a carpal tunnel stretching one. We've got a couple others, mm-hmm. but we email that to patients. But we also, I give them during their, like when they are a patient, I give them to them and encourage them to put the micro break up at their workstation. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them do. And then that's an after unit market, because now they may not be coming to my office, but my info is right there at their desk. Right. And so it's a way of getting that to happen. So it's kind of a distribution. Now I could take that same info card and give it to a patient on their first visit if they sit at a desk and they say, oh, wow, this is really useful. And that is going to help with their clinical outcomes, because now they're going to do their micro break. Now they're going to go to their workstation and fix their ergonomics. So now I'm improving some outcomes, and they're like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is interesting. And then I could also take that same info card, and what we're doing right now is we're taking stacks of them. We're going to local companies and just giving them these cards. Like, here, give these to all your employees, these micro break cards. And then 2 months later, we're going to go buy that same one and give them the ergonomics one. And so that's a before unit. So I took the same piece of content, just kind of reframed what the goal was, and have a different distribution model. Mm-hmm. If you were talking about a multi-million-dollar company and their marketing strategy, yeah, you may change a lot of the different content and messaging. Like, you may tweak a lot of things, but I have to be realistic when I'm talking to chiropractors and make it effective, but at the same time realistic, because we're not working with marketing teams and thousands of dollars of budget each month. And so to kind of answer your question is, yeah, you could change the content geared towards before, during, or after, but you can take the same piece of content, just change up what the goal is and what the distribution is, and now you've targeted one of those 3 categories.
Okay. I got a couple points on this, actually. First is, it sounds like then the giveaway is about how how it can help the patient versus just business cards.
Oh yeah.
So
it's useful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like that. Second thing is, actually, I remember having this mental hang up when I was first starting. Now I just don't care. But do you go to the places yourself as the doctor, or is that like kind of like, why does this guy have free time type of thing?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of free time, but I do a lot of networking, and I do Friday, I'm doing ergonomics assessments at a company right across from my office. I'm actually getting paid for that one too. Sometimes I would do it for free to connect with that company, but they offer to pay me. And I'm not going to turn it down. So I try to now that my practice is more well developed and stuff, is I try to limit my interactions on some more of the big hitter things, right? Like I'll go and do the talk at a company. I'll go and do the ergonomics assessments. I'll meet with an attorney for dinner, like that type of stuff. What I do have is a really good chiropractic assistant where we're doing community outreach with that, and then associates that will do some community outreach. My goal down the road, I'm not there yet, but I've kind of laid out a plan, is to at some point potentially have a full-time community outreach person that would do the drop-offs or try to set up talks, things like that. And then the doctors will go and do the more advanced level stuff.
Yeah.
But if I was starting out and I got more time than money and not enough patience, I'd be all over it.
Yeah.
That's what I did. I mean, that's what you and I did probably when we first started, it was nonstop meeting people for sure.
I've always been surprised at where the referrals come from. And you think about I think about back how I met this one person. I'm like, oh, I cold called them, and I didn't like doing it at the time, but it was, it worked. One thing actually I tried recently, I started this over the past about 3 months. And so I actually got an answering service because we weren't picking up the phone. We were busy. Yeah. And so people would be prompted to leave their information to call back, but also to kind of the reason they called. And what I've noticed is that, so in the past, when people would pick up, the front office would pick up, people would be like, hey, how much for this? How much for that? Do you take insurance? In case we don't. And then the hang up would happen. Nothing would occur. So over the past few months, we just call them. I'd call them back personally and say, "What's going on? I heard you're calling about your back." So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I started doing that because I was curious to see, again, getting back into hearing what patients in the public are asking for in the terminology they're using, and just seeing what else I can create around the questions they're asking. So, but I think that's been useful for me, just getting back in the trench again.
Oh yeah, I think so. And sometimes you have to dive into it. Maybe not all the time, but you got to dive back into it occasionally to check the pulse of what's going on out there. Which is part of it's a little bit of a side topic, but part of what I still treat patients, and I also get chiropractors that run out of ideas and they'll complain to me how do I think of ideas for content? And I was like, do you treat patients? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, that can be your muse, all these patients come in with great questions and great conditions and you answer them all the time. So a lot of times I'll go over to my computer. It's like, oh, that was a damn good question. And I gave a pretty good answer to the patient. So I'll write down on my Evernote at my computer. It's like, oh, here's a good topic. And then you could write about it. Obviously you don't put patient's name and stuff, but you could turn that into a 50-second video that goes on your Instagram or, whatever you want to do. So it's definitely, we have plenty of inspiration for content. Right.
Earlier you said something about a website, and that's What is your website right now? Is it do you have your own? You created like a WordPress or something like that?
Yeah. It's healthfitchiro.com.
Okay. I was wondering because you mentioned all the blog writing and so on, and I've noticed in the past there was a lot of chiropractors who had these sites that all looked exactly the same. They were by the same company. What do you suggest with website creation for these people who have these online business cards? How do you make it better?
Yeah, I mean, if you go with one of the templated ones for financial reasons or ease of use, that's fine, whatever. But just make sure that website platform has the capability of you being able to put a blog on there, you being able to optimize some of the SEO from a white hat standpoint, SEO, not black hat, which is kind of trying to fool Google, which doesn't work anymore. So you do want to try to optimize some of the SEO of it. So if the platform has that, like if it's Squarespace or whatever, then that's fine. If you've got the financial resources to do it, I know I made the jump in 2012 actually not right out of the gates I did, but then we really revamped it in 2014. And to just put in to have a web developer develop it out the way you want, as far as design, feel, make it your own, stuff like that. You can do that. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I invested the resources in it. It's been a big driver of our practice. I look at the website as two things. Let me actually say with three things. One is, you want to get people to your website through, obviously, content marketing, SEO, that total web presence. That's a big part of it. Then two, when they get to your website, the functionality needs there. And three, the messaging is there. So we kind of story branded our website, and it's really easy. We use GenBook so people can schedule right online.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all kind of like right there. And it's my goal is if a prospective patient gets to my website, I don't want them to leave. Like, I don't want them to go, oh, that's nice, I'm going to go check out, see if there's another chiropractor. Once they get to my website, I'm like, well, this is the place I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
within the niche that I'm targeting. Like, that's obviously a key.
Mm-hmm. There was a recent Google update. I don't know if I'm just kind of curious. We were hit about 15% on traffic with it on the site, and it mainly the observation was that it mainly affected medical sites, health medical fitness sites. Did you guys get affected by that at all? Or?
I did. Yeah, we did. It's starting to get back normal, but I don't know, it was 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, pretty much. We started climbing about the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was pretty substantial. It was crazy. And we looked into it. Part of it too was I did a little bit of rebranding of the name, because I have a sports recovery center. So I went, and now we're Health Fit Chiropractic and Sports Recovery. So there's a little bit of that, and we had to update all the listings and stuff. But yeah, that Google update got some folks, but I think it'll start ironing itself out.
Yeah, for a while there, we were looking, and at the same time, I got an email that said our TXT robot was affected or something like that. And over that week, the web guy that I'm using, he was on his honeymoon.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey man, you got can you check this thing out? We just dropped.
I know.
So
it's crazy how, like, Google, because we get probably anywhere from 10 to 15 new patients a month from Google. And so if you get a hit there, if you start doing the math, let's just make up numbers. If a new patient is worth $1,000 to you, and all of a sudden you lose out on 6 per month for some Google update, it's $6,000 in a month, right?
Right.
That's a big thing. That's why you definitely want to have a comprehensive, well-rounded marketing strategy. So if something goes down, maybe something else goes up, it's just not going to kill your practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is a side conversation, and I don't expect you to say prices or anything, but I've learned over I've increased my rates probably over the last couple years steadily, and I've noticed that I charge significantly more than every person around me, and most of the friends or colleagues that I have. Mm-hmm. And it scared patients, I think, in the beginning. Yeah. And then when I talk to them about, I'm like, I want you to know up front, we cost way more than any place that you're going to call. Mm-hmm. And I think it seemed to get their attention, and it hasn't stopped them from coming in. I think we merit the price. Yeah. But do you talk to the chiropractors you mentor about pricing at all?
I do, yeah. I think a lot of chiropractors are falling into the commoditization trap. I feel like every couple months I have to throw in this YouTube video of Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, which I'm a member of him talking about how to avoid the commoditization trap. And he talks about, a Starbucks coffee versus a regular cup of coffee as an example. But I think too many chiropractors are falling into that. Obviously, historically, health insurance companies being in network have commoditized us, and a lot of people are afraid to get out of network. So it's hard, almost inherently, if you're in network with these insurance plans that are only paying $40, $45, then you are commoditized by the insurance company. And so I do talk to people about pricing and about that. So for me, when I opened up, I was in network with Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna. I didn't get in network with United Healthcare because they were $40 a visit. Mm-hmm. In 2012, Cigna got contracted with a third-party administrator, American Specialty Health, and it went to $41 a visit. So then I said to myself, okay, I either have to change my care, the level of care that I give, or I need to get out of this insurance. And so every time that's happened, I've made that decision where I went out of network with Cigna. Now I get a lot of Cigna patients that come in and they're paying me cash, which is great. So it's like every cash patient I see is like seeing 2 or 3 in-network Cignas. Mm-hmm. Then in 2015, Florida Blue, which was our biggest carrier, this one was heartbreaking. We used to get like about $75, $80 a visit, and a lot of patients from there. They got eaten up by ASH, and they got to like 41 or 46, depending on if you build 1 to 2 region or 3 to 4 region. So again, I had to make that decision, and I went out of network with them. And so now I'm only in network with like Aetna and some out-of-state Blue Crosses, and I have a higher cash rate. But each time I decided to pick being able to offer the type of care that I want to offer and still provide high value. So I think that's a key distinction. You know, things aren't expensive if people value them and there's high value, right? Like it's part of it is the cost versus value. And so, yeah, if you were charging $100 a visit and they came in and all they got was their neck adjusted and they were out in 2 minutes, probably not a lot of value there. Nothing against the neck adjustment, but they're probably not going to come in and pay that kind of money all the time. But when they come in and they get a different level of care that they're not getting anywhere else, then they'll see that value and they will tend to refer people that are also of that mindset too. So you start to see the referrals that come in your practice are of a higher level.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I've only been in network one time. I think that was my first year, and I got out immediately. And I've always had the thought that, because I have patients that come in and some of them say like, how come you're not in network with this? And like, it would help you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, look, I don't bet on dying horses, you know, and insurance has never gotten better any year that I've ever been in. And I thought Florida got paid more than I didn't know you guys had ASH over there.
We're disastrous. I mean, our best plan now is Aetna, and that's only like $55, $57, depending on what you bill.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, so there's nothing that's really good down here now. Some of the out-of-state, like luckily with Florida, we have a lot of people that work for companies that are out-of-state, so they have like Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama or whatever, and that still pays relatively well.
Yeah, that's I guess that could be a whole podcast on its own.
Oh, yeah.
Have you done one with anybody on your podcast about insurance suggestions?
I haven't. It's probably a good idea, though.
I'm sure that's a hurt point for people.
You know, one of the things that I did post in the Facebook group is marketing different if you are in network with all the plans versus if you're out of network. And it seems like the consensus, in my opinion on it, is it's going to be different. You know, it's going to be different, I think.
So take us through a couple, what are some mistakes that you've made over the course of the years with your marketing efforts, since you're the marketing guru, man?
It's like part of it is, I feel like there's a couple different things with marketing. You got some folks that are really good at the mechanics of it, like they just know how to optimize YouTube, or they know how to do keywords for Google Ads. That's not me. I outsource that, but I feel like I can apply a lot of good marketing strategies to the profession of chiropractic. I think mistakes that I've made in the past, which I know of, are trying to do too much, right? Trying to do too much content and trying to put it on platforms and not optimizing it. And so that's been a problem. Another mistake I made was, and I didn't know this until we did a full audit a few months back, but a lot of my listings and certain things were not congruent. Like I'd have different types of logos, and some of the logos wouldn't fit in the image thing. Or we moved in 2013, just suite numbers, same building, and there's still listings that were from the old one. So there was like a lot of that going on. So we had to clean that up a bit. So I would say that was a mistake.
That's like an easy win, just getting all your listings in play.
Yeah, it was easy to get that squared away. And then I would say, I'll answer also from a business standpoint, mistakes that I made was being too reliant on a couple revenue sources. And unfortunately, two of them at the same time got pulled like out from under us, which One was that Blue Cross Blue Shield in 2015 getting cut, which I couldn't do anything about. And then two was we had a corporate location that was paying us a lot of money each month, and they got a new CEO, and they pulled that out within the same month of each other. So it was like a $17,000 a month hit in revenue.
Wow.
And you can't predict some of that stuff. I struggled for about 6 months to get through that. Luckily, I was smart about having some backups and still being diversified enough. If it would have just been one thing at the one time, it would have been not a big deal. But when it was two, it was like, what are you going to do? But I learned that having the emergency savings account is very important, and I think people have to keep that into consideration. Is to build up a nice amount. It's all relative. That will make you feel safe and protect you from whatever. Maybe the economy goes bad. Who knows? So.
Well, I thought in Florida you're always supposed to plan for bad weather account.
Yeah. Sadly, as we speak now, Hurricane Michael is about to hit the Panhandle. I'm down in South Florida, so it's not affecting us. But yeah, we know about the weather down here.
Yeah, right. What are some things that you're doing right now? Now that you mentioned that you have the academy,
Yep.
What are some exciting things you're working on right now?
Yeah, obviously we've got the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Show, which is kind of lined up with the Modern Chiropractic Facebook group. We've got 3,000 members in that, so that's been really fun. We've been doing that for a little over 2 years now, and that's grown nicely. And then from there, we do different things. We have a virtual summit coming up. It's on business and marketing, and that will be November 14th and 15th. If your audience joins our Facebook group or listens to the podcast, they'll be able to get the link. I haven't put together the software platform just yet, but that's coming out, and it can be exciting. I'll be having 10 really good presentations, some on business track and some on marketing track, which is great. And then one of the things that we launched in July that I mentioned was the Chiropractic Success Academy. And this is where we dive a lot deeper into these types of topics versus kind of the 30,000 foot overview that is the Facebook group and the podcast. So that's what I'm doing. Kind of the skill stacking, like I mentioned. A lot of people think, how do you have time to do all that? Well, the thing that's been really fun is that as I've done the podcast and the Facebook group and be a part of helping some chiropractors, I've learned so much, and then I'm able to just apply that to my business. And now my business is thriving more than it was before because I'm able to apply that to my practice. And then I use my practice sometimes as kind of like a test run to see if something works or if it doesn't. And so it's been a nice little congruent marriage there. So that's what I've got going on.
What was when you created all that stuff, then what was the problem you were trying to solve in the world?
Well, it stemmed from that 2015, which was, we had such a meteoric rise from 2010. 2010, I opened my practice without taking a loan because I had sold out of a partnership. We had started accumulating corporate on-site locations. I had multiple associates. In 2013, I was able to buy my office space. I've got a 3,000 square foot office that I purchased, the real estate, everything, going great. And then when we got hammered in 2015 on that stuff, I realized I don't want my business to ever be vulnerable again. And so I started to get rid of certain things that were vulnerable. And I knew that if I applied really good marketing, I could get through a lot of the different things that could happen, which was, okay, a lot of my patients before were Florida Blue, and now they're not. I'm at a network with the best plan, was the biggest plan and best plan. And so how am I going to do that? How am I going to get these people to pay us our cash rates? And so that was one of to answer your question, things I wanted to solve is I don't want to be at the whim of insurance companies. And I want to make sure that our marketing is on point to where I have a very reliable and predictable revenue stream every month. And so, and frankly, I really want to have a self-managing practice that is not reliant on me. And that's the goal that I have. And I think having a very good marketing strategy is key to that.
Yeah. Well, so then as you're developing this right now, then What do you think is its most vulnerable point now? Then, like I can imagine. I know with mine, if my website went down, I would probably jump off a cliff, and there was no copy of it.
Yeah, I can answer that question. My most vulnerable part right now is this year is the first year that my Boca Raton office. I have an office in Miami as well, but that my Boca Raton office is just me. I had my last associate, he left in January, and I was just, I'm going to take my time, get through the summer months and all that. And then I'll be hiring again in the not too distant future. But vulnerability would be just that it's relying on me treating patients right now. And that's always a crapshoot, right?
Yeah. So. But you're probably getting extra homed in on getting good patient buy-in and making them happy. So that's great. Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to cover that we haven't covered yet, actually?
Well, I just think, there's a link. If anybody's interested in the Chiropractic Success Academy, they could go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly /your CSA circle, and you could check that out. We do have a student rate, and we have obviously a chiropractor rate. And so check us out there. It's a really good group, and we're continuing to put out really good content into there.
When someone goes through that, what should they expect? Like emails, articles?
It's a platform, so it's like an academy where they could log into, and there's 4 channels. There's the business person, there's the producer, which is marketing, there's the clinician, so we do like clinical things. Like this last month was all about basically documentation. This month coming up is all about Medicare, and we have different things like that. We'll have some things clinically. We got some really good interviews lined up. And the 4th one is about the person, like the mindset, just getting really clear on that type of stuff. So we marry those 4 channels together. We put one module in each of those channels per month. So you get 4 pieces each month. And then we workshop it in the Facebook group. Everybody's pretty engaged in there. And then we do a monthly Zoom call. We're doing a live event next year. So it's just being part of this community that's working towards whatever the success that particular doctor is trying to achieve.
You have a success story that you can share at all right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I won't give the doctor's name because I didn't get permission beforehand, but yeah.
None of this podcast is scripted. I like that we're getting a good dialogue going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But he just started shooting video, and his numbers have reflected that consistently. And so he went in there and just, basically said that it was the joining the academy gave him some skin in the game. He finally started shooting the video based on some of the stuff that we talked about in the group, and he's starting to see the results of just being in action and doing that. And so, we've been doing this is our 4th month, so we're still, there's still more success stories out there for sure, but overall we've had a lot of good feedback. Nice.
I see that too. There was a guy that reached out to me on Facebook. I'm scrolling to look for his name right now. I forget. I think his last name was Mark Murdoch. He's just so hyped on you right now in this little group, this DC business club.
Really? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I see your link right now. If you're not part of this Facebook group by Kevin Christie, get on it.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've done some speaking recently too. I did a webinar to that school up in Washington State. I was just in Kansas City last weekend speaking to some students there. Speaking at Parker Vegas next year, which is exciting, and a few others. So it's also Motion Palpation Institute. I'm speaking on about marketing and business. So
nice.
It's exciting.
You get to hang out with McGill at Parker Las Vegas next year, I think.
Unfortunately, I think I'm speaking at the same time as McGill, so that's going to be a tough battle.
Yeah, I think maybe you just bargain with him and offer him a pound of butter and say, "Can you go an hour later?"
That's awesome.
Well, cool. Then I'll reach out to you for some of the links then, and I'll put them in the show notes so everyone can have them. Okay. Just recap, how can everyone reach you? Best way?
Yeah, they can check out the Facebook group, the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Group. I'm pretty active in there. You can even get inside there. I have it pinned to the top where you can download those healthy desk jockey info cards that I mentioned, and you can actually get the PSD format, and you would need the graphics person to know how to do it in the software, but you could change out the color scheme, the logo, and the clinic information and make them yours, and utilize that inside your marketing. So that'd be the best way to check us out.
Nice. Well, awesome. Thanks for being on. This was I learned a lot, so I'm actually going to have to listen to this again before I let it go.
Perfect. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dr. Christie, for being on. As always, it's a pleasure. I learned a lot from you and a lot of the content that you put out. So everyone, if you did not get the multiple times we mentioned it, the place where you can encounter him and a lot of the material that he puts out is the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Group on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, just go over to podcast. By the way, if you don't listen to podcasts and you drive, you might as well listen to it on the drive. I guarantee you've heard all those songs you've already been hearing multiple times, and they're not going to change. So go on to the Modern Chiropractic Marketing Show. You can put it on iTunes. I don't know if it's on Google Play because I'm a Apple guy. But go reach out to him. You're going to learn a ton from it. And again, if you are struggling and getting frustrated with not seeing the right type of person that you mesh well with in your practice, or you're frustrated about not getting the amount of patients, and you're putting a lot of effort out there and you feel like you're having to get kind of sleazy in your marketing efforts, there's a better way, as you've heard throughout this podcast. And when you start developing the content that you're really going to enjoy making, you're actually going to enjoy the process, and you're going to love promoting and giving this stuff out. You're going to think it's a disservice to not give out this content to those people who are in need of it. Now, I'll talk to you guys next week. Again, leave people know how you found them. And if you are dating Eagle Scout, talk to you later.